Hi, my name is John Kaplinger and I'm a QA analyst here at Livefront. Welcome to my talk on testing for accessibility in native apps, part 1 of a 5-part series. Today we'll be talking about VoiceOver and TalkBack. So, what is accessibility testing for native apps? Well, accessibility testing is making sure that apps work for those who have physical and cognitive impairments. Why is accessibility testing important? Well, 30% of users actually need it. So there's people out there who have visual issues, cognitive issues. Also, improving your app's accessibility improves your app's rankings. If the app is able to be used by more people, then it's going to be ranked higher in the search engine. Also, having an accessible app enhances your brand image. What says it better than paying attention to that 30% that isn't usually looked after? So let's get into it. VoiceOver and TalkBack testing. We're going to talk about what it is, who uses it, how do you enable it, what you should test with it, and some tips, tricks, and gotchas that I've found while testing. So, what is it? Well, it's a screen reader tool that announces the visual components of an app. It allows users to visualize how an app is designed without the need for sight. So it gives people instructions on how they actually can see the app without the visual methods. It also enables alternative methods of navigation versus just having to scroll. Who uses VoiceOver and TalkBack? People who are partially or completely sight impaired, people who have dyslexia or short-term memory issues. So how do you enable it on iOS? It's pretty easy. Just you go into your settings app, you look for VoiceOver, you can search for it pretty easily. And then once you're in that VoiceOver menu, there's a toggle that you can just toggle and it enables it and you're set to go. Now, there's an easier way to do this as well. You can actually set up an accessibility shortcut. Within the settings, there's the shortcut menu, and within there, you have this whole list of different accessibility shortcuts and features that you can enable, and then you can just quickly tap on your home button 3 times, and then you'll be able to access those shortcuts. So, how do you do it on Android? It's pretty much the same way. You just go into your settings app, you look up TalkBack, it gets you a TalkBack menu, and then there's a little toggle, and you enable that toggle, and you're ready to go. You can also do an advanced setting here where you can enable the accessibility shortcut. It's a little different, and then you have a couple of options here. You can either set it up so that you can long press the volume buttons, or you can swipe up with 3 fingers from the bottom gesture, and that will give you the ability to enable your shortcut there. So, what are some things I should be testing with VoiceOver and TalkBack? Well, are the descriptions easy to understand? Is the sequence of what is announced intuitive? Are error messages announced automatically? So what are some things that you should test when trying to figure out if the descriptions are easy to understand? Well, you should make sure that elements are described as to what their function is. So if there's a button, it should tell you that it's a button. Also, if there's a list of buttons, that it should tell you how many is within that list. I don't want to not know that there's 50 in this list and I'm continually swiping through to find the end of the list and finally I get there. So also, functional elements should describe what action is required to take those actions. If it doesn't tell you that you need to triple tap, then it should tell you that you need to triple tap. Or if it's sometimes there's combination gestures where you have to swipe left and down, it should tell you that you have to do that. What are some things that you should test when making sure that the sequence of what is announced is intuitive? Well, you should make sure that the focus order doesn't jump around, like you're not going from the top of the header to the bottom and then all the way back up again. It's going to be a little confusing. You should also make sure that gestures don't skip actual functional elements, like the important information icon that you want to hear info on, that's not just skipped as you're going along. Also, making sure that when you're launching like a new screen, that it announces that you've landed on that new screen. It doesn't necessarily have to announce what that screen is, but if I've tapped on something, I should know that once I reach that new screen, something has been engaged, something's been launched, so that the user who is not able to see it knows that there's something. This is very important with prompts and errors, which is the other thing that we should be testing for. Are error messages announced? I mean, this is really important. If I'm filling out a form, those inline error messages saying whether or not the data is valid, is it actually announcing that when I enter the invalid data? I want to know that I can't enter an @ or some other special character. Also, if I've entered and something failed, like the network failed and I was trying to log in, but I'm not in, making sure that that error message is announced to me so that I know that, oh, hey, I'm not signed in right now. Another cool thing, like if you can, it's not necessarily required by WCAG, but grouping individual sort of like elements together if they're important. So like a list of results that are talking about a store product. The product itself, you could list all the different elements, what color it is, how much it costs, what sizes it comes in. You wouldn't have to scroll through all of that. All right, so what are some tips for testing VoiceOver and TalkBack? Well, you can actually enable it using just voice recognition or Siri. You can say, hey, enable VoiceOver, and it'll do it for you. Using it, like the gesturing is a little different. You're swiping left and right versus up and down. So right is going down, left is going up, which is a little different. And so something to get used to, but also, remember that because you're not going to be able to swipe. Another thing that you should do is enable the ability for the announcements to be as a caption on the bottom of the screen. In the settings, there's a caption toggle that you can enable, and it will actually list what's being announced on the bottom of the screen. Some tricks, using a little Z gesture on iOS will actually go back in your navigation. If you're viewing a list of elements and you don't want to swipe left, right, all the way down through the list, you can actually just use 2 fingers and swipe up, and that will advance you to the next display. And then also Android actually has, Google made an accessibility scanner app that actually validates accessibility labels are present. So that's pretty cool. Some gotchas. The iOS has one where if you triple tap the screen 3 times with 3 fingers, it will make the screen go completely black. And you won't know what's going on because you won't realize that you've done it, and then all of a sudden things are being listed, but you cannot get your display back on. Enabling it is to then triple tap again with 3 fingers. Also, Android and iOS's gestures are slightly different when navigating, especially when it comes to the controls. On Android, you can accidentally get into the TalkBack settings just by gesturing up with 3 fingers. And then once that happens, you're in the settings of TalkBack, and then you're accidentally adjusting the speed or the language that's being announced. So making sure that you steer clear of that, or if you do, not just randomly swiping and changing all your settings, getting out of that first. So also to come with accessibility testing is good bug reporting. This is just as important because, if you're not telling the person on what's wrong or able to demonstrate what's wrong, then it's going to be a hard time fixing it. So make sure you get videos. Make sure you describe what your expectations were of that bug, if I expected it to be announced as a group, or if I expected it to tell me a certain thing, or it told me something totally wrong. That's something that you want to report. Also the impact, does it actually affect the functional use of the app? Can the user now not use something because VoiceOver or TalkBack is enabled? Also be sure to leave the WCAG guidelines, explain what the WCAG is expecting here. They have lots of guidelines and can tell you what's expected for VoiceOver or TalkBack screen duration. So, congratulations! You now know the basics of testing a native app for VoiceOver and TalkBack. What did we learn? Well, making sure that the elements are announced and what is being described is clear. Making sure the order of what's announced makes sense and the app's focus doesn't jump around the screen. And making sure that app elements that reactively appear on the screen, like error modals, are announced to the user. Now go out and use this knowledge to improve 100% of the user's digital experiences. And be sure to check out part 2 of this 5-part series where I talk about testing for dynamic type or font sizing.